The Korean Mafia boss was stunned when the black server's baby reached for him. The baby's giggle echoed through the hotel corridor like a gunshot. Kessia Adeyemi's breath caught in her throat. No, Amari. Not now. Please, not now. She shifted her 9-month-old daughter against her hip, trying to muffle the sound against her server uniform. But Amari was fascinated by the crystal chandelier above, her tiny hands reaching upward, another delighted coo escaping her lips. The other servers had already vanished into doorways. Kessia. The floor manager's whisper was sharp as broken glass. You need to disappear. Now. I know. I'm sorry. Kessia's heart slammed against her ribs. The sitter canceled last minute. I had no one. I don't care if you had to chain her to a radiator. The manager hissed, eyes darting toward the far end of the hallway. If he sees you with that baby. The conversations died first. Then the footsteps stopped. Then even the air seemed to hold its breath. Kessia felt him before she saw him. A presence that made her survival instincts scream run. Sungmin turned the corner slowly, deliberately. Seoul's quiet terror didn't need to announce himself. He was 6 feet of controlled menace in an impeccable black suit, a fresh red scratch marking his cheek like a warning no one dared ask about. His dark eyes swept the corridor, landing on faces that quickly looked away. Then they found her. Who? He said softly, terrifyingly softly. Brought a child into my hotel? Kessia's knees threatened to give out. She'd only been working here 3 weeks. 3 weeks of staying invisible, of perfecting the art of being furniture. 3 weeks of pretending she didn't know exactly what kind of man Sungmin was. Her voice cracked. She's mine, sir. I'm so sorry. It won't happen again. Bring her here. The words landed like a death sentence. Sir, please, I'll leave right now. I don't repeat myself. Every instinct Kessia possessed screamed at her to run, to clutch Amari and sprint for the exit. But her feet moved forward instead, carrying her and her baby toward the most feared man in Seoul's underworld. The hallway had emptied. Even the security guards had found reasons to be elsewhere. Kessia stopped 3 feet away, arms wrapped protectively around Amari. Up close, she could see the cold calculation in Sungmin's eyes, the absolute absence of mercy in his expression. How old? Kessia blinked. What? The child. How old is she? 9 months, sir. Sungmin's gaze dropped to Amari, who had finally noticed him. The baby went still, studying the stranger with startling focus. For a long moment he just stared. His expression didn't change, didn't soften. Then he did something that made Kessia's world tilt. He reached out his hand. No! The word escaped before Kessia could stop it. She stepped back instinctively, clutching Amari tighter. I mean, sir, she doesn't. She's afraid of strangers. She'll just scream louder if. Sungmin's hand remained extended, patient, waiting. Please. Kessia tried again, her voice breaking. She won't. Amari's head lifted. The baby's eyes locked onto Sungmin with laser focus. Her little brow furrowed, not in fear, but in curiosity. Then, impossibly, she leaned forward. Tiny fingers extended toward the most dangerous man Kessia had ever met. Amari. No. Kessia tried to hold on, but her daughter was reaching, straining toward Sungmin like he was someone she recognized. Let her, Sungmin said quietly. Sir, I don't think. Let her. Kessia's arms loosened despite every cell in her body screaming otherwise. And Amari, her baby girl who barely tolerated her own grandmother, who cried when strangers even looked at her too long, reached out and touched Sungmin's face, right over the scratch. The silence that followed could have shattered stone. Sungmin stood frozen. This man who commanded an empire built on fear and violence, with a 9-month-old baby touching his cheek like she was soothing a wound. Amari made a pleased sound, patting his face gently, her tiny hand exploring without fear. And Sungmin, his carefully controlled expression cracked. Just for a second. Just long enough for Kessia to see something that looked almost like shock, maybe even pain, flash across his face before the mask returned. She's not afraid, he murmured almost to himself. Kessia couldn't speak, couldn't process what she was seeing. She should be, someone whispered from a doorway. Sungmin's eyes flicked up, sharp and warning, before returning to Amari. What's her name? Amari, Kessia whispered. He studied the baby like she was an equation he couldn't solve. And you? Kessia. Kessia Adeyemi. A server. Yes, sir. The silence stretched until Kessia thought she might break. Then Sungmin straightened. You're done for the night. Kessia's stomach dropped. I understand. I'll leave immediately. That wasn't a dismissal. His voice was quieter now, almost contemplative. That was an instruction. Follow me. But what Kessia didn't know, what no one knew, was that this moment would change everything. Because the man Soul feared most had just felt something he thought he'd buried years ago. And he wasn't going to let it go. No one spoke when Sungmin stepped into the hotel corridor. Conversations died mid-sentence. Shoes stopped moving. Even the security guards straightened like soldiers facing inspection. Sungmin didn't need to raise his voice. His presence alone pressed down on the air, heavy and suffocating. He was Soul's quiet terror, the kind of man people didn't warn you about because saying his name out loud felt like an invitation for something bad to happen. But now, impossibly, he stood perfectly still with a baby's hand pressed against his scarred cheek. The hallway held its breath. Kessia watched Sungmin's face, watched something flicker behind those cold eyes. Not softness, not quite, something deeper. Something that looked like recognition of a language he'd forgotten how to speak. Amari patted his face again, making a pleased sound. She's not afraid, Sungmin murmured, his voice barely audible. She should be, Kessia thought desperately. We both should be. But Amari simply studied him with her wide, curious eyes. No fear, no hesitation. Just pure, uncomplicated trust that shouldn't exist between a 9-month-old and a man with blood on his hands. Sungmin's jaw tightened. Her name? Amari, Kessia whispered. She's 9 months old. And you? Kessia Adeyemi. His eyes lifted to hers. Sharp, assessing. A server. Yes, sir. The silence stretched like a wire pulled too tight. Kessia's mind raced through scenarios, all of them ending badly. She'd be fired, blacklisted, maybe worse. Men like Sungmin didn't forgive disruptions. They erased them. She tightened her grip on Amari, ready to pull her daughter back, ready to run if she had to. Then Sungmin straightened. His hand dropped from where it had been. Kessia hadn't even noticed when he'd moved to support Amari's back. You're done for the night, he said. Kessia's stomach plummeted. I understand. I'll leave immediately. That wasn't a dismissal. His tone shifted, quieter, but somehow more absolute. That was an instruction. He turned, not waiting to see if she'd follow. Come with me. Kessia's legs moved before her brain caught up. The elevator ride was suffocating. Sungmin stood perfectly still, eyes fixed on the ascending numbers. Amari had settled against Kessia's shoulder, content now, oblivious to the danger radiating from the man beside them. The office suite didn't feel like a criminal headquarters. Felt like a mausoleum. Everything was glass, steel, and restraint. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Seoul's glittering skyline. The furniture was expensive and impersonal. No photos, no quorums. Nothing that suggested a human being actually worked here. Sungmin gestured to a leather chair. Seat. Kessia obeyed, perching on the edge, ready to bolt. But Sungmin surprised her. Instead of sitting behind his massive desk in a position of power, he remained standing, arms crossed, watching Amari with the intensity of someone trying to solve an impossible equation. Amari lifted her head, noticed him, and immediately reached out again. Before Kessia could stop her, Sungmin moved closer. And then, impossibly, he let Amari grab his finger. The baby held on, making a soft babbling sound. Testing. Exploring. Sungmin didn't pull away. He stood there. This man who commanded Seoul's underworld through fear and violence, letting a 9-month-old baby grip his finger like it was the most natural thing in the world. Why are you working here with a child? His voice was quiet, almost gentle.
Kezia chose honesty.
What else did she have? I needed the money, and I didn't want to leave her alone. Something flickered in his expression. You didn't choose easy. No, sir. I don't choose easy either. The words hung between them, a confession disguised as an observation. Amari yawned, her grip on his finger loosening, her eyes growing heavy. Sungmin watched her with an expression Kezia couldn't read. Then, carefully, so carefully it made Kezia's chest ache, he returned Amari to her arms, like she was fragile glass, like she mattered. He stepped back, pressed a button on his desk. Yes, sir? A voice crackled through the intercom. Sungmin's eyes never left Kezia's face. Find Ms. Adeyemi another position. Something visible. Controlled hours. Kezia's heart stopped. Sir. Day shifts only, he continued, his tone brooking no argument. She'll be assisting my events coordinator starting tomorrow. I didn't ask for. I know, Sungmin said quietly. Then softer, almost to himself. Neither did I. Kezia didn't sleep that night. She sat in her cramped studio apartment, Amari finally asleep in her crib, and tried to make sense of what had happened. Men like Sungmin didn't show mercy. They didn't reassign single mothers to better positions. They certainly didn't hold babies with the kind of careful reverence usually reserved for something sacred. It's a trap, she told herself. It has to be. But when she arrived at the hotel the next morning, dressed in the business casual clothes she'd panic-bought at a convenience store, a sleek woman in her 40s was waiting. Ms. Adeyemi? The woman's smile was professional, revealing nothing.
Im Director Han.
I coordinate all private events for Mr. Sungmin. You'll be shadowing me starting today. I don't understand. You don't need to. Director Han's tone wasn't unkind, just matter-of-fact. Mr. Sungmin gives instructions. We follow them. That's how things work here. The work was different. Harder in some ways, easier in others. Kezia learned quickly how to read room layouts, anticipate problems before they erupted, coordinate security without drawing attention. Director Han was exacting but fair, pushing Kezia to think 3 steps ahead. In Mr. Sungmin's world, Director Han explained during their first week, chaos is death, order is survival. Everything has its place, its purpose, its inevitable conclusion. And if something disrupts that order? Kezia asked carefully. Director Han's expression flickered, something that might have been respect. He eliminates it. Or, she paused, choosing her words, or he finds a way to control it. Kezia thought about Amari's tiny hand on Sungmin's scarred cheek. Which one am I? Sungmin watched from a distance. Not obviously, never obviously, but Kezia felt his presence during briefings, when she coordinated vendor arrivals, when she solved a seating crisis that would have derailed an entire diplomatic dinner. He never approached, never interfered. He just observed. It should have terrified her. Instead, it felt like being studied by something ancient and unknowable, not hostile exactly but not safe either. 3 weeks into her new position, Kezia was reviewing table arrangements when she felt that familiar pressure in the air. She turned. Sungmin stood in the doorway of the staff lounge, perfectly still. His eyes weren't on her. They were on Amari. The hotel had arranged childcare. A secure room with a vetted caregiver, toys, everything a baby could need. Amari was on a play mat, stacking soft blocks with intense concentration. She's grown, Sungmin observed quietly. Kezia's heart kicked against her ribs. She hadn't realized he'd been keeping track. She learns fast. So do survivors. The words landed strange. Not quite a compliment, not quite a threat. More like an acknowledgement of something he recognized. Sungmin took a single step into the room. Amari's head snapped up immediately. Her face split into a delighted grin, the kind reserved for people she loved, and she crawled toward him with single-minded determination. Kezia moved to intercept, but Sungmin raised a hand. Let her. Amari reached his shoes and sat back, arms raised in the universal demand to be picked up. She remembers you, Kezia whispered, disbelief coating every word. Sungmin crouched slowly, bringing himself to Amari's level. The baby grabbed his tie, tugging experimentally. He didn't stop her. "Most people forget me the moment I leave a room," he said quietly. "They want to. It's safer that way." "She's not most people."
No.
His jaw tightened. "She's not." Amari babbled something, nonsense syllables that somehow sounded like a question. Sungmin studied her with that same intense focus Kessia had seen in the corridor weeks ago. "She doesn't see what I am," he murmured, almost to himself. "She sees something else." "What do you think she sees?" Sungmin was silent for a long moment. When he finally stood, leaving Amari to return to her blocks, his expression was carefully blank. But his next words sent ice down Kessia's spine. "That's what unsettles me, Ms. Adeyemi." He straightened his tie, his mask sliding perfectly back into place. "She sees something I'm not sure exists anymore." He walked to the door, then paused. "And I can't decide if that makes her dangerous." His eyes met Kessia's, dark and unreadable. "Or if it makes me hope." Chapter 4: Learning the Shape of Danger. Kessia discovered she had a talent for reading violence before it arrived. Not the obvious kind, shouting, posturing, threats. That was easy. Amateur. The real danger was quieter. It lived in the pause before someone answered a question. In the way a guest's eyes lingered too long on exit routes. In the shift of weight that meant a hand was moving toward a concealed weapon. "The Kim delegation," Kessia said quietly, standing beside Director Han during a private dinner. "Table 7. The youngest one keeps checking his phone." Director Han's expression didn't change, but she pressed her earpiece. "Security. Eyes on table 7, south corner." Subtle. 2 minutes later, the young man was politely escorted out. A concealed recording device was found in his jacket pocket. Director Han turned to Kessia. "How did you know?" He wasn't eating. Everyone else was. And he kept touching his collar, right where the microphone would be hidden. Director Han's approval was microscopic but unmistakable. Mr. Sungmin chose well. Sungmin had been watching from the balcony above. The next morning, he appeared in the coordination office, a space he rarely entered. The staff froze mid-motion, conversations dying instantly. But Sungmin's eyes found only Kessia. "Walk with me." It wasn't a request, but it wasn't quite a command either. Something in between. They walked through the hotel's private gardens. Manicured, beautiful, and completely devoid of other people. Sungmin's security maintained a distant perimeter, visible but not intrusive. "You saw the threat last night," Sungmin said. "Not a question. I saw someone nervous in a room full of confident people. And you acted. I reported. Your team acted." Sungmin's lips quirked. Not quite a smile, but close. "You're learning the difference." They walked in silence for a moment. Kessia had learned that Sungmin's silences meant something. He was choosing his words carefully, peeling back layers of intention to find what he actually meant. "Why events coordination?" she asked, surprising herself with her boldness. "You could have just fired me. I could have done worse than fire you. Why didn't you?" Sungmin stopped walking, turned to face her fully. "Because my entire world is built on fear, on control, on making people understand their place in the order of things." His eyes were dark, unreadable. "And your daughter touched my face like I was safe." The honesty in his voice stole Kessia's breath. "That shouldn't be possible, Ms. Adeyemi." But it was. "So I needed to understand why. Have you figured it out?" "No." He resumed walking. "But I've discovered something more interesting." "What's that?" "You're good at this. At reading danger. At anticipating chaos before it arrives." He glanced at her. "That's rare. Especially in someone who wasn't trained for it." Kessia thought about the streets she'd grown up on. The men she'd learned to avoid. The situations she'd taught herself to escape before they became inescapable. "I've been reading danger my whole life, Mr. Sungmin. I just never had a title for it before." Something shifted in his expression. Not softness. Sungmin didn't do soft. But recognition. Understanding between two people who'd learned survival in different languages but could somehow still translate. "What do you see when you look at me?" he asked quietly. Kessia considered lying. Considered saying what he probably expected: fear, respect, submission. But she'd learned that Sung-min valued truth more than comfort. "I see someone who's forgotten what it feels like to be touched without flinching." The words hung between them like a confession neither had meant to share. Sung-min's jaw tightened. Observant. Occupational hazard. Over the following weeks, the dynamic shifted in ways Kessia couldn't quite name. Sung-min began asking her opinion. Not commanding, asking. What did she think about security placement? Did the guest list feel balanced or volatile? Could she sense tension in the room before it escalated? And every evening, without fail, he appeared in the childcare room. Sometimes he said nothing, just watched Amari play, that same intense focus in his eyes. Other times he crouched down, let the baby grab his fingers, listened to her babbling like she was sharing state secrets. Kessia noticed how his staff had stopped flinching when he entered rooms. How they'd started looking to her for cues about his mood. How Sung-min's driver now knew to have Amari's favorite crackers in the car. He was protective. Quietly. Almost unconsciously. Like he'd expanded his definition of things worth defending. And somehow Kessia and Amari had slipped inside that circle. It should have terrified her. Instead, it felt like standing in the eye of a hurricane. Dangerous, yes, but somehow the safest place to be. The message came 3 days before the charity gala. Director Han's face was pale when she found Kessia. "We have a problem." "What kind?" "The kind Mr. Sung-min kills people over." She handed Kessia a tablet. "Someone's planning something for Friday's event. We don't know who. We don't know what. But intelligence says it's credible." Kessia's blood ran cold. "Amari, we'll be here. In the building. Then we cancel." "Mr. Sung-min doesn't cancel." Director Han's voice was grim. "He confronts." Kessia looked at the security briefing, her mind already racing through scenarios, exits, vulnerabilities. Somewhere in this building, danger was circling. And this time, it was hunting all of them. The charity gala was perfect. Too perfect. Kessia stood near the ballroom's eastern entrance, watching the crowd with growing unease. Everything was exactly as planned. The crystal, the champagne, the carefully curated guest list of Seoul's elite mingling with politicians and foreign investors. But something felt wrong. She couldn't name it, couldn't point to a specific person or moment. Just a crawling sensation at the base of her skull that she'd learned never to ignore. "Director Han," Kessia spoke into her earpiece. "East entrance. Something's off." "Define off." "I don't know yet. But..." "Ms. Adeyemi." Sung-min's voice cut through the channel, calm and absolute. "Trust your instinct." "What do you see?" Kessia scanned the room again. Then she found it. "Security team. South balcony. There should be 2. I only see 1. Silence on the line. Then, lock it down. Now." Everything happened at once. The missing guard appeared in the crowd, wrong posture, wrong movement, wrong everything. His hand went to his jacket. Kessia's body moved before her brain caught up. "Amari!" The first shot shattered the chandelier. Glass exploded like a bomb. Screams erupted. The crowd became a stampede of panic and expensive fabric. Kessia sprinted toward the childcare suite, her heart a drum of pure terror. The corridor was chaos. People running, security converging, more gunfire echoing from multiple directions. This wasn't one shooter. This was coordinated. She burst through the childcare door. The attendant was already huddled in the corner. Amari clutched against her chest, the baby screaming in fear. "Give her to me now." Kessia grabbed her daughter, turning toward the secondary exit, but froze. 3 men blocked the hallway. Not hotel security. Wrong uniforms. Wrong faces. Wrong intentions. The lead man raised his weapon. Kessia's body moved on instinct. She dove sideways, curling around Amari, waiting for the impact. It never came. Sung-min appeared like violence given form. He hit the first man with enough force to crack ribs, disarmed the second before he could fire, put the third on the ground in a move so brutal Kessia heard something snap. Then he was on her. Not attacking, shielding. Behind me. Now. More shots. Closer this time. Sungmin grabbed Kessia's arm, pulling her down a service corridor she didn't even know existed. His body stayed between her and the gunfire, his movements precise and lethal. They reached a concrete stairwell, reinforced, defensible. Down, Sungmin commanded. All the way to the garage level. What about? Go! But Kessia heard it in his voice. The choice he'd already made. He could hunt them, track them down, end them with the efficiency that made him Seoul's most feared man. Instead, he was choosing them. Another explosion, louder, closer. The building shuddered. Sungmin shoved them through a maintenance door into a narrow hallway. His hand found the back of Kessia's head, pressing her down as bullets punched through drywall above them. Stay low. They ran. Amari was sobbing against Kessia's shoulder, her little body shaking with terror. Kessia whispered useless comfort, her own fear threatening to choke her. Sungmin moved like a predator, checking corners, reading angles, his body always positioned between them and danger. They reached a reinforced room, some kind of panic suite. Sungmin punched a code, shoved them inside. Steel walls. No windows. A phone line. Supplies. Safe. The door sealed behind them with a hydraulic hiss. Silence crashed down like a wave. Kessia sagged against the wall, checking Amari frantically. No injuries. No blood. Just terrified and screaming but alive. You're okay, Kessia gasped, rocking her daughter. You're okay, baby. You're okay. Ms. Adeyemi. Sungmin's voice was too quiet. Kessia turned. He was leaning against the door, breathing carefully controlled. His suit jacket was torn. His white shirt, red, spreading. Oh my God. It's not deep, Sungmin said calmly, pressing his hand against his side. Blood seeped between his fingers. But it's not nothing. Kessia stared at the wound, at the man who'd thrown himself between them and bullets, at the choice he'd made. Protection over pursuit. Them over revenge. Why? The word escaped before she could stop it. You could have ended them. Why did you? Sungmin's eyes found hers. Dark, unguarded, honest in a way she'd never seen. Because, he said quietly, his voice rough with something that might have been pain or might have been truth. She reached for me. His hand was still pressed against the wound, blood still spreading. And I'm not letting her down. Above them, gunfire continued. But in this reinforced room, sealed away from the world, something had fundamentally shifted. Sungmin slid down the wall, his breathing becoming labored. Stay with me, Kessia whispered, moving toward him. His eyes were already starting to close. Not going anywhere, he murmured. Then softer. For the first time, nowhere else to go. The gunfire stopped. Not gradually, all at once, like someone had cut the strings holding the chaos together. The silence that followed was somehow worse. Kessia sat on the cold concrete floor, Amari finally quieting against her chest, and watched Sungmin breathe. Each inhale was careful, measured. Each exhale cost him something. He'd slid down the wall until he was sitting, one hand still pressed against the wound in his side. His expensive suit was ruined. His carefully maintained control was fraying at the edges. But his eyes were still sharp, still watching, still protecting even while bleeding. How bad? Kessia asked quietly. I've had worse. That's not an answer. It's the only one that matters right now. He shifted slightly, winced. Security will clear the building. Then they'll come for us. How long? 20 minutes. Maybe less. 20 minutes trapped in a concrete box with a bleeding crime lord and a traumatized baby. Kessia almost laughed at the absurdity. Instead, she moved closer. Let me see. Ms. Adeyemi, you took a bullet for us. Her voice was steadier than she felt. Let me see the damage. Sungmin studied her for a long moment. Then, slowly, he removed his hand from the wound. The blood was still flowing, but not gushing. The bullet had torn through muscle and tissue on his left side. Painful, dangerous, but not immediately fatal. Kessia grabbed the first aid kit mounted on the wall, her hands working on autopilot. Clean the wound. Apply pressure. Bandage tight enough to stop bleeding but not so tight it cuts circulation. Skills learned from a childhood she tried not to remember. Sungmin watched her work without flinching. Where did you learn that? Streets aren't kind to people who can't patch themselves up. No, he agreed quietly. They're not. Amari had gone silent, her tear-stained face pressed against Kessia's shoulder. But she was watching Sungmin with those impossibly focused eyes. Then, as Kessia finished tying off the bandage, Amari lifted her head. The baby reached out, just like she had that first night in the corridor. Just like she always did with him. Her tiny hand found Sungmin's jaw, touching gently, and she made a sound. Ma. The word was soft, uncertain, but unmistakable. Kessia's breath caught. Sungmin went absolutely still. Ma, Amari said again, patting his face, her first word, her first attempt at language, directed at the most dangerous man in Seoul. Something in Sungmin's expression cracked wide open. Not tears, not quite, but something rawer, more fundamental, like watching a foundation collapse in slow motion. I'm not. His voice broke. She doesn't. Ma, Amari insisted, her small hand still resting against his cheek. Sungmin closed his eyes, his jaw working like he was trying to hold back something too big to contain. When he opened them again, Kessia saw devastation there. Longing, fear. I wasn't supposed to have this, he whispered. His hand rose, trembling slightly, to support Amari's back. People like me don't get. We don't. She doesn't know what you are, Kessia said softly. She only knows who you've been. To her. I've killed men for less than breathing wrong. His voice was rough, scraped raw. I've built an empire on fear. On making people understand that mercy is weakness and attachment is a liability. I know. And she calls me. He couldn't finish the sentence. Amari babbled something, comfortable in the space between them. Content. Safe. She shouldn't trust me, Sungmin continued, his eyes fixed on the baby. No one should. I wasn't supposed to live past 30. That was always the plan. Burn bright, die young, leave nothing behind that could be used against me. What changed? Sungmin was quiet for so long Kessia thought he wouldn't answer. Then, she reached for me. His hand was cradling Amari now, protective and careful, like he'd done it 1,000 times before. And I realized, I wanted to be the kind of man she thinks I am. The words hung in the reinforced silence, a confession that cost more than blood. Kessia felt tears she hadn't known she was holding slip down her cheeks. Sungmin, stay. The word stopped her cold. He turned to look at her fully, his dark eyes exhausted, honest, asking for something he'd probably never asked for before. Not because I'm ordering you. Not because you work for me. He paused. Stay because... He didn't finish. Didn't need to. Because above them, the world was still dangerous. Because below them, his empire was built on violence. Because between them, a 9-month-old baby had called him Ma and shattered every wall he'd spent his life building. Sungmin, Kessia whispered. What are you asking? His hand tightened fractionally around Amari. I don't know, he admitted, and somehow that honesty was more terrifying than any threat. But I'm asking anyway. Kessia should have said no. Every survival instinct she'd honed over 27 years screamed at her to take Amari and run. To disappear into the city's sprawl where men like Sungmin couldn't find her. To choose safety over whatever dangerous thing was forming between them. But she'd seen the way he'd moved during the attack. Body positioned between them and bullets without hesitation. She'd felt his hand steady Amari's back like she was made of spun glass. She'd watched him break when her daughter said a single syllable. And now he was asking her to stay. Not commanding. Asking. I need to know something first, Kessia said quietly. Sungmin waited, his expression guarded but open. The men who attacked tonight. What will you do to them? He didn't flinch from the question. I will find them. And I will make sure they understand that certain lines cannot be crossed. You mean you'll kill them? Yes. The honesty was brutal, undeniable. And you want me to stay? To bring my daughter into a world where that's normal? Sungmin was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough with something that might have been shame.
No.
I don't want that. He looked at Amari, still nestled against Kessia. I've never wanted anyone close enough to see what I really am. Safer that way. Cleaner. Then why ask? Because she already sees me. His jaw tightened. And she's not afraid. And I. He stopped. Started again. I've spent 15 years building walls. Making myself into something untouchable. Something that doesn't need this. He gestured vaguely between them. But your daughter touched my face like I was worth saving. And I can't. His voice cracked. I can't go back to pretending that didn't matter. Kessia felt her heart constrict painfully. You're asking me to trust you. I'm asking you to let me try. The words came out desperate. Honest. I can't promise I'll be good at this. I can't promise I won't fail. My world is violence and control and inevitable consequences. I know what your world is, Sungmin. Then you know I shouldn't be anywhere near either of you. Kessia looked down at Amari, who'd fallen asleep against her chest, exhausted from terror, from tears, from the chaos that had tried to swallow them whole. Her daughter, her responsibility, her entire world. And this man, this dangerous, brutal, impossibly gentle man, had chosen them over everything else. Amari doesn't see a killer when she looks at you, Kessia said softly. She sees someone who holds her carefully, who shows up every evening just to watch her play, who threw himself between her and bullets. That doesn't erase. I know. Kessia met his eyes. But maybe it doesn't have to. Sungmin stared at her like she'd spoken a language he'd forgotten existed. I grew up in places where good men died young and bad men thrived, Kessia continued. I learned to see danger in the way people breathe. And you, Sungmin? You're the most dangerous man I've ever met. Something shuddered in his expression. But you're also the only one who's ever made me feel safe. The words hung between them, a confession, a gamble, a choice. Sungmin's hand found hers. Not possessive. Not demanding. Just holding. I will fail you, he said quietly. Eventually. In ways I can't predict. Probably. I will make decisions you hate. Do things you can't forgive. Maybe. And I can't promise this ends well. Kessia squeezed his hand. Nothing in my life has ever ended well, Sungmin. But I'm still here. She saw it then, the moment he understood. The moment he stopped fighting against what Amari had started. Stay, he whispered again. But this time it wasn't a question. It was a plea. Okay, Kessia said. Just that. Nothing more. But it was enough. The panic room door opened 20 minutes later. Security flooded in, medics close behind. Questions, protocols, damage reports. But Sungmin never let go of her hand. And when they finally left that concrete sanctuary, Kessia felt the shift. She wasn't leaving because she had to. She was staying because she'd chosen to. Days turned to weeks. The hotel returned to its controlled elegance. The attackers were dealt with quietly, efficiently, in ways Kessia didn't ask about. But something fundamental had changed. Sungmin still ruled his empire with absolute control. Still commanded fear with his presence. Still moved through the world like violence waiting to happen. But every evening he appeared in the childcare room. And every evening, Amari reached for him. And every evening, he held her like she was the only thing keeping him human. Kessia watched it happen, this impossible transformation. Not redemption, not salvation, just a dangerous man learning that some walls weren't meant to stand forever. She's walking now, Kessia observed one evening, watching Amari toddle between furniture. Sungmin's lips curved, not quite a smile, but close. Stubborn, like her mother. Careful, like someone taught her to be. Their eyes met, understanding passing between them without words. Time was passing. Things were changing. And neither of them knew where this path led. But for the first time in his life, Sungmin wasn't planning the ending. He was choosing to see what came next. 6 months changed everything. Not dramatically, not with grand gestures or declarations. Just slowly, like water reshaping stone. Persistent, inevitable, transforming. Amari was walking now. Really walking. Toddling through the secure garden behind Sungmin's private residence with the determined chaos only a 15-month-old could manage. Her laughter echoed off the high walls, bright and fearless. Kessia watched from a bench as Sungmin followed 3 steps behind, close enough to catch her if she fell but far enough to let her explore. He'd changed. Not softened. Sungmin would never be soft. But the sharp edges had found different angles. He still commanded his empire with absolute authority. Still walked into rooms and made dangerous men nervous. Still carried violence in the set of his shoulders. But he also knew which toy made Amari laugh hardest. Could identify her different cries. Hungry, tired, frustrated. Kept emergency snacks in the pocket of his $12,000 suits. She's fearless, Director Han observed, appearing beside Kessia with tea. The older woman had become something like a mentor, maybe even a friend. She learned it from watching him, Kessia replied. It was true. Sungmin had restructured his entire world around Amari's safety. Security protocols weren't about controlling territory anymore. They were about protecting what mattered. Business decisions filtered through a new question. Would this put them at risk? He'd turned empire building into fortress building. And somehow, in the process, found something that looked almost like peace. He's different with you too, Director Han said quietly. The staff has noticed. Different how? He asks questions instead of giving orders. Considers consequences beyond immediate gain. She paused. He smiles sometimes. Not often, but sometimes. Kessia watched as Amari stumbled, caught herself, then looked back at Sungmin with triumphant delight. He crouched down, arms open, and she ran. Full speed, no hesitation. Straight into his chest. The way he caught her. The way his hand cradled her head. The way his eyes closed briefly, like he was memorizing the moment. He's choosing, Kessia murmured. What? For the first time in his life, he's not just surviving. He's choosing. That evening, after Amari had been put to bed in the nursery they'd created, secure, monitored, but warm, Kessia found Sungmin on the balcony overlooking Seoul. The city sprawled below them, glittering and dangerous and alive. You're thinking, she said, moving to stand beside him. I'm always thinking. You're thinking loudly. His mouth twitched, almost a smile. I was remembering. What? The first time Amari reached for me. He was quiet for a moment. I thought she was making a mistake, that she couldn't possibly understand who I was. And now I think she understood better than I did. Kessia leaned against the railing, studying his profile. What do you mean? Sungmin turned to face her. In the dim light, his features were softer, less guarded. I built my life on one principle. Never let anyone close enough to hurt you. Control everything. Trust no one. Survive at all costs. He paused. And then a 9-month-old baby touched my face and I realized. What? That survival isn't the same as living. The words landed between them. Heavy, honest, transformative. I've done terrible things, Kessia. Things that can't be undone or forgiven. His voice was steady, accepting. I'm not asking for redemption. I don't deserve it. Then what are you asking for? Nothing. He looked toward the nursery where Amari slept. I'm just choosing, every day, to be someone she can keep reaching for. Kessia felt her throat tighten. And when she's old enough to understand what you've done, then I'll tell her the truth. His jaw set. I won't lie to her. Won't pretend I'm something I'm not. But I can be someone who chose differently because of her. That's not nothing, Sungmin. Maybe not. He turned back to the skyline. But it's all I have. They stood in comfortable silence. Not touching, but close enough to feel each other's presence. You're not afraid of me anymore, Sungmin observed quietly. Kessia considered denying it, but they'd moved past comforting lies. No, she admitted. I'm not. Why? Because I've seen you with her. I've watched you reorganize your entire world around protecting something you never thought you'd have. She met his eyes. Dangerous men don't do that. Men who've found something worth protecting do. Something flickered in Sungmin's expression. Vulnerability. Hope. Fear of hope. She's changing me, he said softly. I know. I don't know if I can sustain it. If I can be. You're already being it. Kessia's voice was firm. Every day you choose her. Every day you show up. That's not performance. Sungmin. That's transformation. He was silent for a long moment. Then his hand found hers on the railing. Careful.
Tentative.
Asking permission. She didn't pull away. I wasn't supposed to want this, he whispered. Neither was I. Soul glittered below them. Dangerous and beautiful and unforgiving. But up here, in this moment, they'd built something that could withstand it. Not perfection. Not redemption. Just choice. And for the first time, Sungmin believed that might be enough. The garden had become their refuge. High walls kept the world at bay. Security cameras watched from discreet angles. But inside these boundaries, something impossible had taken root and flourished. Amari ran through the grass. 18 months old now, confident on her feet, fearless in the way only loved children could be. Her laughter was pure music, untainted by knowledge of what existed beyond these walls. Sungmin sat on the stone bench, jacket discarded, sleeves rolled to his elbows. Sunlight softened the sharp lines of his face, caught the silver threading through his dark hair. He looked human, not diminished, not weakened, just present in a way Kessia had never seen in those early days when his presence alone could empty hallways. Up, Amari demanded, running toward him with arms raised. Sungmin lifted her effortlessly, settling her on his knee. She immediately grabbed his face between her small hands, a gesture she'd never stopped making, even as she grew. Gentle, Kessia reminded from her spot on the blanket spread across the grass. She is being gentle, Sungmin said, amusement coloring his voice. This is her gentle. Amari patted his cheeks, then leaned forward to press her forehead against his. Mine, she declared with the absolute certainty of a toddler. Something in Sungmin's expression cracked open. Yes, he murmured. Yours. Kessia felt her chest tighten. Watch this man, this dangerous, impossible man, hold her daughter like she was the only thing in the world that mattered. Do you remember that first night? She asked softly. Sungmin looked up, Amari still cradled against him. Every detail. You were so rigid, so controlled. I was terrified. The admission surprised her. Of what? Of her. He stroked Amari's hair absently. She saw something in me I'd spent 15 years burying. I thought if I acknowledged it, if I let myself want this. He trailed off. What? It would destroy me. His voice was quiet. Everything I built was based on being untouchable, unreachable. And then she touched me and I realized. Amari squirmed free, running back to her toys scattered across the grass. Realized what? Kessia prompted. Sungmin watched his daughter play, his expression unguarded in the afternoon light. That being untouchable meant being alone. And I'd been alone for so long I'd forgotten it wasn't the same as being strong. Kessia moved to sit beside him on the bench, close enough that their shoulders touched. You're still strong. Different strong. He turned to look at her. Before, my strength came from fear, from making people understand that crossing me meant death. It was power built on destruction. And now, he gestured toward Amari, who was stacking blocks with intense concentration. Now my strength comes from protecting something I can't replace, can't rebuild, can't control. That scares you, terrifies me. But he was smiling barely but genuinely. Every single day, they sat in comfortable silence, watching Amari create and destroy her block towers with equal enthusiasm. I killed someone last week, Sungmin said quietly. Kessia stiffened slightly but didn't pull away. They'd reached a point of brutal honesty months ago. He was targeting supply routes, would have led investigators to operations that would have exposed this. He gestured around them. Us. Her. I know what you are, Sungmin. Do you? His eyes were searching. Do you know and accept it? Or do you just tolerate it? Kessia considered the question carefully. Deserved the honesty. I know you've done terrible things. I know you'll probably do more. I know your empire is built on fear and violence and things I can't change. She met his gaze steadily. But I also know that when bullets were flying, you chose us. When you could have hunted them down, you stayed. When you could have remained untouchable, you let a baby break you open. That's not redemption. No, Kessia agreed. It's something better. It's choice. Sungmin was quiet for a long moment. Then, she never saw a monster.
No.
Even that first night, when everyone else was terrified, she just reached for me. Because she saw what you could be. What you are when you let yourself. What am I? The question was raw, vulnerable. Kessia smiled. You're the man who shows up every evening. Who knows which book makes her sleepy and which one makes her laugh. Who restructured his entire world because a baby touched his face and made him remember he was human. Amari abandoned her blocks, toddling back over. This time she reached for Kessia first, climbing into her mother's lap. But her hand extended towards Sungmin. An invitation, a bridge. He took it, his large hand engulfing her tiny one. I wasn't supposed to live past 30, he said softly. People like me burn bright and die young. That was always the plan. Plans change. Yes. He looked at Amari, at Kessia, at this impossible life they'd built inside fortress walls. They do. The afternoon sun painted everything gold. Beyond the walls, Seoul continued its dangerous dance. Power, violence, ambition, fear. But here, in this protected space, something else had grown. Not innocence. Innocence couldn't survive in their world. But trust, and choice, and the quiet transformation that happens when someone sees you clearly and reaches for you anyway. Amari tugged on Sungmin's hand, pulling him down until he crouched at her level. She grabbed his face again, her signature gesture, and smiled. Safe, she said, one of her newest words. Sungmin's eyes closed briefly. When they opened, they were bright with something that might have been tears but looked more like gratitude. Yes, he whispered. Safe. And in that moment, Kessia understood the complete truth. The baby had never seen a monster. She'd seen a man who desperately needed someone to reach for him. And in reaching back, he'd found the only kind of redemption that mattered. Not forgiveness for what he'd done, but the courage to choose differently because of who was watching. If you enjoyed the story this far, don't let it end here. Hit that subscribe button so you never miss the next chapter and enjoy more story from us. And if this story gave you chills, drop a like and share it with someone who loves powerful romance with a dangerous edge. Your support keeps these stories coming. Thank you.